Okay, I want to slow down what you're talking about in terms of the currency, because this is a really important element of people needing to understand how these wars get started. So Libya, obviously, African nation. Muammar Gaddafi was the head of it. You are correct. He was very much cooperating with the United States, cooperating with the West. And suddenly he starts to realize that this is not even power. This cooperation is not even, stands before the UN. He was a member state of the United Nations, and starts asking questions. And basically, Libya was on the up and up with him as the leader. But when you say he wanted to nationalize the currency and to no longer be subject to the US dollar, what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is he would no longer be under the thumb of the U.S. and the U.S. currency and being controlled by the U.S. dollar and Wall Street, which is, of course, the CIA's right arm. All of those knew that that was going to cut off their power if he nationalized his currency, which he had every right to do. But it was going to cut off the U.S.'s major power, especially the CIA's major power, and they were communicating with him, which they had over him. And that was his death knell. And of course, once again, plausible denial in that National Security Directive 10-2 in 1948. As long as the U.S. government could deny killing Gaddafi, of course, he was a madman. That was the term. And then he wasn't killed by the U.S. or the CIA. He was killed by his own rebels who took him out because there was a revolution. No. As a matter of fact, the Gaddafi regime, and Hillary Clinton was in large part behind this, but the Gaddafi regime is now turned into a terrorist state. And the CIA seems to have a track record of doing that, staging a coup and then turning that country, that area into a terrorist nation. They created Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. The Taliban, of course, now has all of our arms and weapons. They created in Sukarno in Indonesia is a horrible one. President Sukarno was communicating with John F. Kennedy, and for the first time they wanted a Muslim and American union, and Kennedy was going to visit Sukarno. The CIA staged a coup, overthrew President Sukarno, and it resulted in the death of 500,000 to 1 million Indonesian civilians. You think people forget that sort of thing? No, they don't. So over and over in Iraq, which was based on false intelligence, and yet they gave George Tenet the Presidential Medal of Freedom for doing it. In Iraq, we created ISIS. We created the so-called moderate Free Syrian Army, which has in their declaration to establish a global Islamic caliphate. The CIA created them. And the probably the oldest example, most powerful one, I think, is Iran. Iran decided, a democratically elected government decided that, well, we're giving our oil for free to the United States. And why are we doing that? I mean, we want to provide for our own people. We want to nationalize our oil. So they did. And the CIA immediately went in, staged a coup, overthrew the democratically elected government, put in the puppet Shah, who was had a few cards missing from his deck. Rather, he was just a puppet, and they knew it. So they overthrew him, and now what do we have? The chief state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it all started back with the CIA's coup. Then we look at Ukraine, if I may. John Brennan was former CIA director, was making secret trips to Ukraine in 2014, and he helped organize and stage the coup.
He wasn't the only one. McCain was.
McCain was all in there, and Lindsey Graham. Now, he changed his spots. As soon as McCain died, Lindsey Graham became a Trump supporter. So what's going on with him? That's a big question. But they overthrew a democratically elected government, put in Zelensky, the CIA's puppet, violated an agreement that the United States had signed with Russia that we would not have a NATO ally within a certain distance from their border. We signed that. America signed that. Well, Ukraine comes out with the sponsorship of the CIA and says, well, we want Ukraine to be part of NATO, and provoked that whole thing. And just like when the CIA went behind JFK's back through Allen Dulles, put us on the verge of nuclear annihilation. Here we are back again. The CIA stages a coup, puts in a puppet. Russia tries to defend itself, and I'm not justifying Vladimir Putin. He's murdered a lot of people, but provoked Putin to come in, and now once again we're on the verge of nuclear annihilation, just like the CIA did with the Bay of Pigs under JFK. The CIA does not care about human life. It doesn't care about peace at all. It cares about winning and perpetuating and expanding itself. And that's not an exaggeration.